Okay, this strange thing, which is labeled switch, I have no idea what it does. It was connected to the fuse box by two things. First, it was connected on one of these wires, which are both the tan wires are connected together, so that was plugged into the ignition jack on the fuse box. There's a little male connector that you can plug something like this into. Actually, it wasn't plugged into the ignition, it was plugged into another jumper that was off of the ignition. This one was plugged into something called lamps, LPS. It's right next to the fuse. There's one on either side of the fuse that controls the dashboard lights. So somehow I think that male jack is hot whenever the dashboard lights are on. So both of those plugged into the fuse box are potential sources of current. There's an output jack on here, but it was plugged into nothing. And there doesn't even appear to be a plug that could go in there in the area. So I'll have to do some research and find out what this thing is and what it is supposed to control. So I'm inside the car now, and I'm looking at the wire. This wire right here, is a pink with a black stripe, was connected into a male jack that's hot when the ignition is on in the fuse box. And this is that little jumper that I was saying. Let's get the camera on it. This is that little jumper. I have an ohm meter connected in there now, but that's the little jumper coming off of the hot on ignition, where this thing was plugged in. One of these two wires, whichever is the mate. One's male here and one's female. So whichever one matched this one, I believe the female one was plugged into that. Like I said, I have no idea what that was for. So I was curious, because I didn't think it came from the factory with this wire, what it would be powering. And that's why the ohm meter is out. And see if I could shed some light on where I want to show you. There we go. What I did is I connected, as you can see, this ohm meter to the jack that was in the hot when the ignition is on, and that's during crank as well. And what I found is that I tracked it over to right here, the pink with the black stripe right there. It goes into this little something or other. I'm going to have to take that off, see if I can figure out what it is, and look at a wiring diagram and see if I can figure out from there. But long story short, the significance of this is I should be able to just put a There is a male pin in here. I should be able to put a female connector in there and hook up all of the wires that go to the air conditioner, etc., that are required for having power to them when the ignition is on. So that's a good place to tap into it. I think the transmission and the air conditioner are the two places I need to do that. Because the sniper I'm doing on the outside where the distributor was. So yesterday I took this unknown device. Well, it was unknown yesterday. Today I have a pretty good idea what it is. I took it off of the fuse box. This was wired to the dash lights. This was wired to an ignition. And this is the connector that was into the ignition tap. So what I've come to find out is that, and I guess it wasn't totally wasted effort because I learned some stuff. Apparently this is a piezo buzzer for the ignition, I'm sorry, for the headlamp warning. And basically inside this unit is a diode that only allows current to flow one way. So these are connected inside with a diode in between, which is why when I tested it, I showed a lack of continuity between that pin and this connector. I suspect if I would have reversed my ohm meter, it would have shown continuity, which would have confused me even more. But at any rate, apparently it takes its ground through this ignition and it comes in here, but if there's power in this line, it cancels out the power to the buzzer, so no current is flowing. I have never seen anything like that. So this is going to go back in, and one of the reasons I took it off was so that I could use the ignition tap for the things like the transmission I'm putting in and the air conditioner. But as it turns out, there's this extra tap right here, so a male spade connector can slip right into there, and I can get my power off of the ignition because this one will be plugged into the wire coming out of the harness that plugs into the ignition terminal in the fuse box. I had to think that through because I was questioning whether there were really two taps on there, and there are. So, as I said, it wasn't a total waste of time because I learned something about headlight buzzers, warning buzzers, and I will be putting this back in, but using this tap to get ignition power when the key is in the start or run position. And this will still feed the headlight warning buzzer.